Hi friends, how are you guys? Hope you're doing well. Today I'm going to be sharing my birth story, the birth of my second son Jacob right here. He's now a month old, and I don't know why I decided to wait so long to share my birth story, but I think it's because I ended up getting Bell's palsy and my face was paralyzed for a while, so it was hard to talk, but I'm ready. I mean, my Bell's palsy isn't 100%, but I am totally ready to share my story. So let's get started. So on April 24th, it was on a Monday. I remember going into the lab to get some blood work done before I actually gave birth on April 27th because I had a scheduled C-section. And I remember I was in the lab and I was like, Justin, we gotta go. I'm in labor. Like, I felt really painful contractions and I could not handle them. So Justin took me to the hospital and we went through the whole labor, they called it like the labor triage. We went through all of that. I got into the gown and they put me on the monitors and I was having some pretty strong contractions. And the thing is, I was in the hospital pretty much all day. We had to figure out childcare. We called Justin's dad, all of that for Liam to be watched, all of that for me to be sent back home because I could not dilate. And that was really tough because even when I went home, I was in a lot of pain. I was still feeling contractions. The next day, I felt contractions. The day after, I felt contractions. I felt contractions all the way till the April 27th when I was scheduled for my C-section. And I asked the doctor, I was like, I'm having contractions and I'm not dilating, and this is what happened to me last time when I had my son Liam. I just for some reason cannot dilate myself. It just doesn't happen. Even when I get help dilating, like with Liam, I couldn't. They had to have an emergency C-section with Liam, which is why the doctors recommended I do a C-section my second time around. And I was really like frustrated because of that, but they told me I could not get a C-section because I was 38 weeks pregnant and not 39, even though I was going to be 39 weeks pregnant in a couple of days. Like, legally, they can't do that. So I went home contracting a bunch, but then finally, April 27th, I got a call the night before and they told me the time I was supposed to come in. They told me 6 a.m., so I could not sleep. Like, when I knew the time, I was so excited. I could not sleep. And then I just could not go back to sleep at 2 a.m., so I decided to take a shower. They gave me like these cleansing cloths to put on top of my stomach and to rub onto my stomach. They're like antibacterial. So I did that after I showered and I just stayed awake in bed, just like so excited, texting my mom because my mom knew exactly what time I was going to give birth. So she was awake early too. I guess she was excited herself and we were texting each other. And so finally, 5 something rolls around. We're driving to the hospital and, they prepare me for the C-section, and this time around I ended up getting a spinal block instead of an epidural, and the spinal block only lasts for a certain amount of time, whereas the epidural can last for hours upon hours. And with the spinal block, as opposed to the epidural, with my emergency C-section, they had to actually put me to sleep because it was such a shock to me because I did not want to have a C-section the first time around that they had to put me to sleep. But this time around, with the spinal block, I was awake and completely aware the whole time that the C-section was happening. And the spinal block, it felt like a sting. And then it feels like a burning sensation throughout your back, and then all of a sudden your legs feel numb and everything feels numb from like the breast down, or like maybe chest down, or it just hits you fast, and they help you kind of lie down so that you don't fall down. And I was just lying down. They have the drapes covered, to cover me from seeing anything. And finally, in like 30 minutes or so, they called Justin and they're ready to cut me open. And I am like so excited this time around. I'm not scared. It's just a very happy moment because I know that today is the day that I'm going to meet Jacob. And but the thing is, it took long. It took too long for them to get Jacob out. Like they were having a really hard time removing Jacob from me. And then later on, I found out that okay, so I can't describe it. I like a lot of things are running through my mind right now. So it took them a long time to cut me open to remove Jacob out of me, but the moment I saw Jacob, like it was amazing, and we were very surprised because Jacob was so very close to 9 pounds, and that was so shocking to me. I mean, I knew I was big my entire pregnancy. I knew how huge I looked, but I didn't realize I was carrying a 9 pounder. So he was 8 pounds, 15.4 or zero point 0.2 ounces. He was born around 8:30 a.m. and even though I got there at 6, it took a lot of time for them to prep and all of that. I saw Jacob for the first time. I didn't cry. I was just so happy and very calm this time around. And I was just talking to him like, oh, hi, Jacob. I love you. Things like that. I was just so happy to meet him. It was such a different experience compared to my first. My first was very scary because it was an emergency C-section. This one was like, I know this is going to happen. And it was just so wonderful. But the scary part of it all, the whole like behind the scenes, behind the drapes that I didn't know about, was that it was taking the doctor a very long time to remove Jacob from me. And she later explained to me that it was taking them longer than usual to remove Jacob from me because my previous C-section scar tissue was difficult for her to remove Jacob because the scar tissue, she said something, it was kind of confusing at first, like especially when you're just like when you first give birth and you're going through all these physical like pain, you know what I mean, like in your healing, like everything's a little loopy and you're on pain meds and then the doctors tell you things like that. But she told me that the scar tissue from my previous C-section was attached to my uterus, which made it attached to the lining of my wall. So it was hard for the doctor to cut me open to get Jacob out because she had to make sure she wasn't going to cut my, she says, my bladder or other organs. And she even explained to me that I lost so much blood, I hemorrhaged, that I almost needed a blood transfusion. Very close to that, but I didn't end up getting a blood transfusion, which I am very thankful for, but I almost needed it. And she mentioned that if I do have a third child, that it might be very difficult for me to have a third C-section because of the scar tissue. And she says that like nothing happened in the first C-section that caused the scar tissue to be the way it is. It's just the way that my body heals. She said that it was like a jagged scar tissue as opposed to, I don't know a lot of medical terminology, but she just said that it would be difficult for me to have a third child via C-section. But then vaginally, for 2 times, I just couldn't, so that was kind of hard to hear. So there's just a lot of things that Justin and I need to consider if we do want a third child. Jacob was very healthy. He latched on very well. I nursed him right away, and he just wanted to be on my boob the whole time, and it really helped with my milk production because I felt like the next day my breasts were already engorged and I already had milk, which was quicker. I heard that your second child around, if you are nursing, your milk comes in faster because your body already knows what it's doing. And I feel like that's exactly what happened because the next day I was completely engorged and like I had milk for Jacob, which was really great. And then, the hospital is it's a really wonderful place and the nurses are absolutely amazing, but it's a place where you can't really get much sleep because the moment you try to fall asleep, they're coming in, checking on you, taking your blood, checking your temperature, checking the baby, all of that. But the next day they had me walk. And the first attempt at walking, I couldn't do it. But then 3 hours later, once the meds kicked in, I started to walk and I felt really good about it. And I got to, walk with the nurses around, the hospital. I got to walk with Justin. I got to like push Jacob around, and that was great. The very day I gave birth to Jacob, a couple hours later, when when we were in, the room that we were gonna stay in for a while, Liam got to visit. So Liam got to meet Jacob like within hours of Jacob coming out of me, which was very special. It was very like, I don't know, I didn't cry much. I was just very happy that day. I mean, of course, there are happy tears, like super happy emotional tears, but to me, I don't know what it was. Like, the older I get, there's like a sense of peace that I have, and like, I was just very peaceful and happy at the same time. And I was also loopy from, all these pain meds. They gave me morphine with the spinal block, and then they gave me ibuprofen. I think it was ibuprofen, and then they gave me oxycodone or codeine, and so I was on a lot of pain meds, and yeah, and after giving birth, I remember feeling like I was so hot, like I was sweating so very much the very first day, and then the next day I was cold. So like, it was just a weird shock to my body. I have no clue why. And we only stayed in the hospital for 2 days. The first day I could not eat, and when I did attempt to eat, I vomited, so I could not eat. And that was tough on me because you're on so much meds, and the only thing you're taking in is drinking water. Like, that's not really good for you at all. And so I really wanted to eat, so it was like baby steps. First the apple juice. If I could down the apple juice, then I could eat. So like, I had to wait until the next day, and we were only in the hospital for 2 days. They asked me if I wanted to stay a third day, but I, because Liam is at home with grandparents, I want to be with him as well. So I was like, I would like to just go home. And so, they discharged me and they let me go home after 2 days. And that was really wonderful. But what happened was the third day, which was at home, I remember being at home and going up the stairs. I felt like, you normally bleed, after giving birth, whether you're having a vaginal or a C-section, you will bleed. And I was bleeding a lot. And to me, that was normal because when I had Liam, I bled a lot. But this time around, I was going up the stairs and I felt like a lot of blood came out. So I went to the restroom and I checked, and I had a huge blood clot. And when I mean huge, I mean like baseball size blood clot. Like, it was huge. I called the advice nurse and they told me it was normal, and I didn't think it was normal, but she said it was, so we just let it go. And I felt fine. And then days after, I started noticing a weird taste in my mouth. Like, I don't think it was connected to the blood clot at all, but I just thought I'd mention it. Like, that was a huge blood clot. But after, I started noticing this weird bitter taste in my mouth. Water tasted bitter, food tasted bitter, and just everything I ate just started tasting weird. And then a couple days after the bitter taste in my mouth, one side of my face just completely became paralyzed. I could not move it. It was very difficult to eat. Like, I couldn't even swallow. And then the other side of my face became paralyzed. So both sides of my face became paralyzed, and it was really hard because I could not smile. I could not, like parts of my face hurt, like especially where the cheekbone area was, my nose. I couldn't like flare my nose. I couldn't move anything. That it was very hard for me to eat. So even drinking water, I would choke on water. So I would have to use a straw to drink my water. But other than that, like, I felt normal. Like, my body, like from like, head down, my entire body felt normal, and I healed very well from the C-section. Sometimes I still wear my back brace, but most of the time I don't, and I feel as though I healed from my C-section faster than when I had Liam. Maybe it's because it's the second time around and your body kind of is used to it or something like that, but I healed very well. Jacob is doing very well. He lost, I think it was like 7% of his birth weight after he was born, but he's definitely back to it. I went to a lactation specialist a couple of days after I gave birth to Jacob because I noticed with Jacob, like my nipples were starting to bleed and hurt. I think he was just drinking or just like chewing at my nipples and it hurt really bad. So I'm very glad that I went to a lactation specialist because she helped me get Jacob on to latch on and to get more of the boob for him to drink instead of just the nipple itself. And it was just hurting so much. And even though I breastfed Liam for 2 years of his life, I forgot what it was like to have a newborn because, you know, breastfeeding a toddler is a lot different than a newborn. Newborns are still learning, whereas a toddler is just like, here you go. You know what I mean? So anyhow, that is my birth story. I'm just very grateful that I am healthy, that Jacob is healthy. He didn't have any type of jaundice or anything like that. I was very surprised because he was born at 39 weeks. And Liam was born at 40 weeks, 3 days, and he had jaundice, I remember. So every baby is very different, but it's very hard. Like, you want to compare your experiences to your first and your second. Like, I always seem to do that because, you know, I've had 2 different experiences. So it's like, it's very easy to compare, you know, and like to think about, oh, it happened like this and it happened like that. Everyone's birth story is different, and I'd love to hear about your birth story if you would like to share it. I'd love to read about it. Just because I don't reply as much as I used to in the comment section, it's only because, you know, I just had Jacob and like I can't, you know, be on a computer as much as I used to, but trust that I still read them. Like, you know, I'll still read them when I'm like nursing Jacob, and then I'll reply on my phone sometimes too, but like sometimes they're like broken sentences and stuff like that, but I love reading them. Please share your birth story if you guys want to, but if you don't want to and you want to keep that to yourself, that's completely fine too. But I thank you, friends, so much for watching, and I love and appreciate you guys. And if you guys want, I have a vlog channel, April Justin TV, where I shared my birth vlog of Jacob, if you guys want to check it out. And oh my gosh, you guys, this week, I'm going to be 6 weeks. Once I see my doctor next week for the whole 6-week checkup and she says I can work out, I'm ready to cycle, you guys. I am not going to wait 10 months like I did with Liam. Anyhow, I love you guys. Bye.